Greetings. Can you hear me now? Somebody say hello. Yeah, okay, great. Welcome to Zadokites Part 2. I hope you were able to make it to Part 1. I did half of the history there. Next week, we're going to do the other half of the history. That's really important to know. I think the greatest question that I get from people wondering about the Zadokite calendar is, when did the calendar change? And what caused it to change? Hasn't it always been this way? Isn't this the calendar of Adam and Eve too? Speaking of the lunisolar calendar, the one that Jews use today. I checked this out actually quite a few years ago. Hold on. When I first started looking into this, I guess 10 years ago, and all I did at first was look into the Jewish dictionary. It's about that thick. It's not that big of a book. I looked under calendars. You might have one. And what you can read right there in their own dictionary that there were a number of different calendars used throughout the time. What we're doing now and what we've discovered with the 4QMMT document and the Dead Sea Scrolls and Jubilees and Enoch is that there was an earlier calendar, and that a time came when the leadership of the temple turned over, and a group of priests got into the leadership of it. They exiled the Zadokite priests, killed some of them. Hold on, got some people entering the room. Maybe somebody can help me with this. Yeah, I was thinking like you, Steve. And I know you'll probably fall asleep, but hold on a minute. Yeah, I'll make you the, what power? What power? You're the co-host, brother. If you see somebody pop in, let them in. And let's see, where was I? They turned over the management of the temple, exiled the Zadokites, exiled their allies, and killed a bunch of them. You can read about it a little bit in First and Second Maccabees when they talk about Hasidians. Okay, we're talking about Zadokites there, or you might even go as far as to say Proto-Essenes, pious ones. All right, and so it was at that time in about 175 BC, just before the Maccabean War, that this temple turned over that way, and it was really confirmed in Hellenism. Zadokites were gone, Greek influence came in under the Maccabees, under Jonathan Maccabee. I think he was the nephew of Yehuda Maccabee, the nephew, and he wanted power, and he wanted glory, and he wanted money. So he turned it back over to the Greeks. They changed calendars. They did that because they had better chances to make money on the markets by changing the days of fasting and feasting. So they brought, instead of the Zadokite calendar, or I would say it's the Yahweh calendar, if you look at Ezekiel 40 through 44, they brought that in, and it gave them a great advantage because it was exactly the same as the Seleucid calendar, the Greek calendar of that time. You can see a little part of this in the Didache, if you cared to. There's Eric V, somebody get him. You can see a little bit of it because the Didache says, don't fast on these days like they do. Rather, fast on the original days. I think they were Wednesday and Friday. And they're just saying, don't fast on the market times or on the non-market times. Fast on the market days. You don't have any money to make any money anyway. And of course, by that time, by the middle of the first century, these people were no longer called Zadokites. They were called Sadducees. The two words are really the same. Zadokite is from Hebrew. Sadducee is from Greek. You got Zadok and you got Sadok. They both mean the same thing, Zadokites. But when the true Zadokites, the true family got kicked out of there, then the ones that came in and usurped, they took the name only from Greek. So they were still known as Zadokites, or by the time we get to the an English Bible, it's Sadducees, because they were Sadducees. I know how old that is. Forget it. I think clear back from Sunday school days at the Southern Baptist Church. All right, you ready to start? In the name of the Father and the Son, amen and amen. We dedicate these to you. We pray that you would open our minds and hearts and help us to understand what ought to be a simple program, but turns out to be pretty difficult. Give us that wisdom, those brains. Give us the minds of holiness and faith and understanding. We ask for the sake of the Father and Son and for our fellow people. Amen. Now, let's see here. Okay, I have some notes I'm going to look at. I'll show them to you in a minute because I have some things for you to download if my download links work. There are actually 3 calendars described in the Qumran-related literature. The 3 calendars are the Jubilees calendar, obviously. That's the calendar found in the book of Jubilees. There's the Enoch calendar, the calendar found in the book of Enoch. And the third one is the Yahad calendar, or Yahad calendar, that's found in documents like the 4QMMT, Miksat Ma'asa HaTorah. By the way, Norman, I'm really glad you're here because I think I came upon a thorny place today in this. The calendars are very similar, all 3. They vary mainly in the number of festivals included. As you know, Qumran had a few more festivals. They were not festivals of Yahweh, but they were pretty much festivals of convenience, things that the temple needed. They didn't even have a temple actually at that time, but they set up festivals for these things: wood, wine, oil, and maybe 4 or 5 others. That's all we know about. But if you'd like to have more information about these 3 calendars, let me know. And I will see that you get the calendar pack that will tell you about that. But the main one we're going to look at tonight is the Yahad calendar, because it strictly conforms with the festival schedule in Leviticus 23. And so we won't be dealing with those other sub-feasts. We'll take that up probably next week. And the moon has nothing to do with this calendar. You got to know that. Although the background texts do show how the moon might imperfectly follow the solar calendar as an alternate way, I guess, of finding the festivals. To learn more about the 364-day solar Zadokite calendar, you can download the Super Calendar Pack. And I'm going to give you a link to that because it's pretty big. See if I can figure out how to get a link on this thing. Come on, come on. Oh, wow. Hold on a minute. I'm going to have to get another file up here, as is usually the case. It's not allowing me to even go get my own links, but we'll get them before the day is over. There's some of these we need. And what you want to do when you have it, or take a note on this for a little later, is to mark the 2023 vernal equinox for the Northern Hemisphere. The equinox is vernal because it's in the spring. It'll be March 19th, 20th, 21st. There's also a question on whether to use the equilux or the equinox. And this year, it made a big difference, a week's difference, if you use the equilux and you use the equinox. No, I don't want to define those words. But let me just say, they're not the same. Two different times. They just happened in 22 to be 2 days apart, and that 2 days was in a breaking point on the calendar that would have changed the start date by a week. So what I got for you then is Jerusalem's located in the Northern Hemisphere, I believe. So we're going to have the same equinox for Jerusalem as we do over here, 19th, 20th, or 21st of March. According to WeatherGov, the upcoming vernal equinoxes will occur on these dates, and you might want to write these down. In 2023 at 5:24 p.m., Monday, March 20th. 2024, 11 p.m., Tuesday, March 19th. Yes, it makes a difference, especially if you're going to use an alternate method that I'm going to give you. 2025, 5 a.m., Thursday, March 20th. And in 2026, 10:45 a.m., Friday, March 20th. Now, you're going to have this already written down for you if you are downloading my instructions. The first day of a new year is always on Wednesday, always, as are some of the other feasts on Wednesday. So Wednesday is the fourth day of the week, according to 4QMMT and some of the other texts. But why Wednesday? Why is that significant? You probably already know. That's because the sun, moon, and stars were created on the fourth day, theorizing that Wednesday was the beginning of all earthly time, the fourth day of creation, thus now the beginning of each year. First day being Sunday, same as now. And here's a note. The first day of the week and the first day of the year, they are different. Not like our calendar. First day of January is the first day of the year. Not on this calendar. The first day of the week is always a Sunday. The first day of the year is always a Wednesday, and they're always different. And here's a second very important note. To avoid intercalation, that is, adding extra days later to get the calendar straightened out in the subsequent years, as the Jewish calendar does, putting in 13 months every once in a while, each new year, first day of the year, must be calculated by one of the following two methods. What I'm saying is you don't have to worry about popping in a couple of weeks every 5 years or 7 years. No need to. I don't know how many times I've gone over this and proved it. But still, I guess this is hard to get in some people's minds. If you tack your new year first day to the equinox each year, not just one time and they go on and on and on, someday you're going to have a mess on your hands. But if you calculate that first day of the year every year, that's really all you need to do. And you will avoid intercalation. Now, I know people's going to give me some problem about this, but I'm going to tell you why in a minute. I'm going to say even Ave ben Mordecai was mortified to see that this worked. So finding the first day, your first alternative, the one that Norman Gray uses, which is the majority report, the majority opinion, you mark the Wednesday after the equinox. This is going to be the one I'm going to use here because it's the most common, 60%. That is in my poll of people on New Year's that will listen, or on YouTube that listen to my podcasts on this subject. I gave them a poll, and it was 60% that uses this method. The Wednesday after the equinox, and that's day one. Now, the 60% think this is the first day of the new year, the Wednesday after the equinox. I personally don't agree, but I'm going to do the rest of these instructions based on that because it's popular. The alternative is the minority report. 33% of polled use this. You find the first day of the week, you go to Sunday after the equinox. Go to the next Wednesday and mark it as day one. You could, in some cases, be in the minority because you might be a week later than other ones. But I'll tell you why. My theory is to use this. I prefer this method in any week because I believe, through all the reading I've done on this, even though it's not expressed exactly, one needs to have a first day of a week before one has a fourth day. So here's what I'm saying. If the equinox comes on Monday, I'm saying you've got to go to the first day, that's the next Sunday, and then to the fourth day to pick up the first day of the year. Can you see the difference? It could mean a week later. If the equinox is before Sunday, then you can use the first method. If it's after Sunday or even on Sunday, you've got to go to the next Sunday because that doesn't count as the first day of that week. The sun and moon and stars had not been created yet, according to Genesis chapter 1. Is that understandable? You've got to have a first day to have a fourth day. If the equinox happens before Sunday, you can't, in my opinion, you can't just go to Wednesday. You've got to go to Sunday first, the first day, then a fourth day. But the majority just go to the Wednesday after the equinox, no matter whether there's a first day or not. Now, this is, like as I said, the minority report. 33% of those polled use this way. And I think mainly from my teaching this, because I was sure I read that in the text. And then when they asked me, where did you get that? I couldn't find it again. So a lot of text on this here. And, but the people in the Yahad, they like that idea better, where you've got to have a first day. Now, there's another alternative, sometimes used, is to take the first day of the new year, that is the day that the equinox, the day of the equinox. Did I get that right? The first day of the new year starts on the day of the equinox, or the day after the equinox. That's not good. That is against the scrolls. It's got to start on a Wednesday. That alternative, or one or the other, is used by 7%. In my opinion, this can't stand, as it does not properly coordinate with the 4QMMT and the other calendar documents in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yet still, the method is used by some folks. I go looking to see. And I was noticing today, as I was going forth and looking at more of Zadokite calendar users and see what they're doing, that when we started looking into this 10 or 12 years ago, there was nobody using this calendar. And you were pretty much a messianic heretic if you even thought about it. Now, people are using it all over the place. That doesn't mean they're right, but that means that people are wising up in messianic movements. And I'm glad to see that, aren't you? They say, how are you ever going to get everybody on the same calendar? That'd be a miracle. Well, I think that miracle's happening. So we're going to go to days now. Days are 12 hours long, from sunup to sundown. I believe we have proof of that. The dark hours are nights, just like now, here in this culture. Days don't start at sundown for Zadokites. Days are usually bright. And what we consider to be days in our culture, same thing. Look, didn't Yeshua say to his disciples in John 11:7, let us go back to Judea? Rabbi, they replied, the Jews just try to stone you, and you are going back there? Yeshua answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? If anyone walks in the daytime, he will not stumble, because he sees by the light of this world. I think Yeshua there is talking about 12 hours in the day. And I think maybe John, whoever he is, whoever wrote this down, just missed this. Didn't see the significance of him saying that. Maybe couldn't. But what about you folks that say the English Bible speaks of new moons? You know that word Yirak or Yiriak, moon, doesn't occur in the text. I think new moon only occurs a couple times in the entire Tanakh. The Qumran manuscripts teach us that the text originally said new months, or just new, Kodesh. as they do today. You read the Hebrew, you've got the Masoretes writing down for you, new moons. But the word moons are not there. They're filling that in. Tradition's filling that in. Many of the informed believe that the scribes of the Pharisees, again called Masoretes, influenced the readings of Leviticus since their calendar originating in Parthia was based on the phases of the moon. The Sadducees and the Pharisees had different calendars. In fact, in Yeshua's time, there were at least 4 different feast calendars going. Perhaps these Pharisaical Masoretes even removed the word months entirely. But the Qumran documents, which the Pharisees prohibited others from reading, and of course the Pharisees took over Judaism after the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, admit that the moon's movements are too unstable to base the feasts on. That's what the Qumran documents say, and they use, especially Enoch, the word Yerach. They don't leave it out, moon. Next, talk about seasons. There are 4 seasons in the Yahad year. Each season consists of 3 months, like ours. Now, the months aren't named. You don't use Tishri and Tammuz and those pagan names from Babylon. They're simply numbered, as are the days. I only use the days of the week from Nordic mythology like we use now because people are familiar with them. The 3 months of each season are composed of the same number of days, like this. Month 1, 30 days. Month 2, 30 days. Month 3, 31 days. And that is a season. That's 3 months. 3 months equals 91 days per season. You must have 30, 30, and 31. The second season, 30 days, 30 days, 31. The third season, 30 days, 30 days, 31 days. And that's all you need to worry about. You're only dealing with 7 months here. Yet it's 91 days per season. And that really does come right out of Enoch. There's these 4 non-days or special days, they're called, that we find in Enoch as well. I'm not going to deal with them because 30, 30, 31 sounds fine to me. It's exactly what we use, except our 31 days are different days. So a Yahad year consists of 364 days. Very convenient. It's divisible by 7, as in the 7 days of the week. But what about the length of the year? Now the exciting question comes. How do you reconcile the 364 sacred year with 365.25 solar year? Well, the answer, which makes some people head spin, is actually very simply understood. Look at the vernal equinox. What is the time period between vernal equinoxes? If you can answer that question, then you have the big clue to the reconciliation between years. Because vernal equinoxes are 365 days, 0.25 and a fourth, days apart. Each year, the sacred calendar's opening day is coordinated with the vernal equinox. So you see, the beginning of each year is attached to that vernal equinox. And then you start a new year when the next equinox comes. And the vernal equinox to vernal equinox is 365.25 days. Hello, Victor. How you doing? Nunez. After the 7th month, there are no sacred days. According to Leviticus 23. Now listen, this is another one, mind bending. Sometimes you just have to bend. The sacred calendar doesn't need months after the 7th month. In antiquity, the feast calendar wasn't used after the time of no more feasts. When they're done, they had no use for this calendar anymore. The sacred calendar is put away. It's only for judging when the feasts are. The upshot is that the beginning of the next year is not tied to the end of the former year. The beginning of the next year is not tied to the end of the former year. The next year, like the last, is tied instead to the equinox. So as long as the new year is tied to the equinox and tied to the equinox every single new year, we needn't be concerned about the year's ending. We need never add or subtract days. We need never to intercalate. We need never add a 13th month, as with the moon calendars. We only need to use the same process of finding the beginning of a year, connecting it with the equinox. As long as you do that, you don't just follow up a new year from an old, because that doesn't work unless you decide you want to intercalate, which Dead Sea Scrolls say that's sinful. Using the moon is evil. I don't know why. Let me remind you, there are 365.25 days between equinoxes, the same length of the year, same length of time as the solar year. Here's an equation. Equinox to equinox equals 365.25 days equals the solar year. That's a double equation. Set up each day connected with the equinox, and adding days later will never be necessary. I know that's hard, but I'm telling you, try it out. It works. Mordecai, he went out 200 years to check it out. 200 years. Didn't lose a bit of time. And you won't. Soon you'll say, that was so simple. Why didn't I think of that? Next, I hope maybe you've got a sheet out here. You printed off the 7-month calendar, blank calendar. Because I like to see somebody doing this, and I'd like to see what happens, see if it works. I didn't get through it tonight, but it took me a long time to write this up and find these resources. And I'll say hello to Karen Funderburg. I hope you got my email today. Let's go next to the Levitical or Yahwist festivals. Now that we found our start of the year for 23 and know the scheme of seasons and months, we have the basics down. We take out Leviticus chapter 23. Doesn't really make much of a difference what version. There are some I really like that are much better, more literal in my thinking. I'm liking this one here lately called the Concordant Old Testament. it's privately done. It's so literal, yet so readable. And there is no words hidden in there that aren't brought out. Look at it sometime. One we've been thinking about in the Yahad and using lately in our studies is the Rotherham. The Rotherham diaglot. I guess the Rotherham diaglot. That goes back to the first of the 20th century. It is tremendously literal. And my friend Sean McKinley turned us on to that one when he said that, hey, there are words in the Greek that no other Bible has except the Rotherham. We checked that out. We did a couple programs on resurrection to show that this Bible brought out ideas and words that were not anyplace else. And sure enough, makes us speculate, but it's always feels so good to find something like that. Chapter 23 informs us that Yahweh said to Moses, tell Israel's people about the special days when they must worship Yahweh. They are holy days. Oh, I said a dirty word. Holy. The Israelites must come together and have a feast on these days. The first holy day, we often don't think of a holy day as the Shabbat. The Shabbat recurs every seventh day. There's no crazy schedule like in the lunisolar calendar. The day that we know is Saturday. A lot of people calling it Saturn Day here lately. Or day 7. How do we know Saturday is the 7th day? That question comes along all the time. Well, there's just two methods I think about and lean on, and that is, first, the linguistic history of the word Shabbat. The linguistic history goes way back, and some variation of Shabbat is used for that 7th day in languages as far-flung as Eastern Asia to the United States. And there's some that don't use a variation of Shabbat, like Slovakia and Slovenia and Transylvania. But I'm pretty sure Dracula changed the name of the day. And what I say, the second way is the fact that the Hebrews or Jews have kept immaculate records of the days of the week since they were last revealed in the holding back of manna in the wilderness journey of Exodus 16. And I'm going to add, for people that don't know, I found a lot of people didn't know that there are 2 Shabbat requirements. 2. I talked to somebody here lately that said that she didn't want to desecrate the Sabbath by going to a wedding on Saturday. I said, are you having your meeting on Saturday? She said, no, I never do that. I said, then you're already breaking the Sabbath. Why do you care? You're going to be breaking it anyway, because this is a day when people meet together for worship. And Yahweh said you mustn't do any work in any place where you live. It's the Shabbat of Yahweh, a day of rest. So there's something else needed there, and that is a holy convocation. You got to be in a meeting. That's why the Yahad, through New Earth Restoration has a Shabbat meeting, a service, a formal service, though with testimonies and a lot of informality, every Shabbat at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. And you are more than welcome to come. This meeting is growing. It's phenomenal. And I think one of the differences we do is that we go back to the earliest liturgies that can be found. Liturgies that Yeshua would have used, like when he went into the synagogue at Nazareth. He got up to read. It was his turn to read. And he did. He read the Haftorah. We found some very early liturgies, that is, orders of the service. And did you know that the Christian church liturgy is the same as the Jewish synagogue liturgy? It's the same, except the different parts have different names. Okay, see you on the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a Yom Tov. It always occurs on Saturday, day 7 of the week, all year, never varying. Now, a Yom Tov, also called a high day, means no working. Instead, the believer must attend a worship meeting to fulfill the Shabbat. Search that out yourself. See, it's not true. That is in with the rest of the high holy days. Now, look, I need to go get something to drink, and we've been at this an hour.